Hello everyone, time for something just a little different. Today I am looking at, well, this rather old case now. It's the Fractal Design Node 202. It looks like this case has now been discontinued, at least very recently, so you can pick it up at a, well, quite a discounted rate, and I found this case very useful. It was used up, well, for the last few years to house my Hackintosh, which I will look at a later date. But now it needs to be, well, it doesn't need to be, but today it's going to become my work PC. So the Zenta 4750G is going to be going into this machine because I need a bit more desk space, and I did say I was going to do a case transplant because the Zenta case was a bit cheap. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the Zenta case. It does obviously come with the ability to have an optical drive, where this does not. This didn't have any kind of additional expansion on the front, so the amount of time I used the optical drive, it was mainly for ripping PS3 games, which I will cover in another video at some point. So I've decided just to forego that and use an external caddy for that particular drive, and everything will be going into this machine. So let's look at the Fractal Design Node 202 a little closer then, shall we? The dimensions in this case, we've been about the base. With the base, it's 125 deep by 385, 332, and without it, it's 377 by 82 by 330. So it's a pretty small case in terms of height, but the rest of the aspect of it is not far off a normal size. It's just much thinner, much more like a traditional desktop computer. So, you know, you could always whack a monitor on top of this, though I wouldn't recommend it because of where the exhaust fan for the CPU is. Times like this, you realise you need a bigger desk. Well, a bigger table, because recording is not great, but it's good enough for what we need. So the top, after unscrewing some screws on the bottom, does pop off. Underneath we do have a fan filter, which is 3mm thick if you're wondering, which gives you a little bit more height if you require taller CPU cores. Now the whole thing is very tight in here, and the cable management is, well, pretty dire. For whatever reason, these cables are hugely long for what they need to be, since they only really need to go to, at worst case, over here. So they're far longer than they need to be, which is a shame. It makes this just a little bit more difficult. I'll quickly overlay some maximum measurements here because I don't know them offhand, but it can take a pretty much full length card. I know some of the newer cards are much longer, so it probably won't take those, but pretty much up to this point, standard full length cards are fine. And there is quite a lot of height here, so it can fit something like the Carmex, no problem whatsoever. You also get a bit of space down the bottom here to install 220mm fans if you wish, and a magnetic dust guard or dust filter. PSU is the one here, is the one that came with it. It is only 450 watts, Fractal Design branded, but it does the job for what this machine will be taking. You can take any standard size small FX or SFX power supply. So here we get your typical very short ATX power on these really quite compressed cables. CPU power, once again quite a compressed cable. This one's quite long for some reason, but I'm guessing they wanted you to route it round. But as you'll see when a board's in here, it's a bit tight. 2 SATA power, for over here. They've not really given much room here considering how close they need to be together, so that's a bit annoying, but it does work just about. And we do have 2 8-pins for the graphics card, so that's pretty good. Normally a 450 watt PSU only gives you 1 8-pin, which is always a bit weird, but we've got 2 here, so that's great. Now, power cable is one of these internal affairs. I wish they hadn't done this this way. It would have been nicer if it ran down this side, because I could have easily just put this over here with a bit of space. It would have allowed some cable management, but this is what we got. So unfortunately, the only way to run it through is through here. There is a gap here, but obviously once that's there, that gap no longer exists. So you have to run it through here. There's a little gap for the cable just there, and it just pops in just there, so that's a bit terrible. But at the end of the day, this case wasn't exactly expensive when it was new, and with it being discontinued now, you can pick this case up for around £50 in the UK at the moment, which is an absolute bargain. I'm probably going to get another one because I have another project that would benefit from this size case. Personally, I prefer smaller case than this, but this does perfectly if you have quite a large graphics card and you don't mind the lower profile or the height for the CPU fan. So that's all that's really in here. Of course, you get your standard bits and bobs down here. You've got USB 3, which is always useful, HD audio, and obviously your power button and LEDs. Now the whole back of the case does come off, so you can get access to this. There's just some plastic clips around the edge, which are very stiff. There's one on the front as well here, but it does pop off and it's not much of an issue once you get it off. But I'm not going to do it today because it is an absolute fiddle with this particular clip down here because it's very tight. So, what's going in here? Well, it's what was in the Center machine. Quickly extracted the board from the case. It is this Asus Prime B550 MK. Of course, this is not going to fit into the Node 202 because it's a full micro ATX case, plus that fan is way too high. But this is the components, minus the board and the CPU fan, that are going to be going into that Node 202, along with the GTX 750 Ti from Palette. But the board we are going to be using is a board that's been featured quite a lot recently, is the ASRock B550M, the ITX version, which is a brilliant board. So I'm going to extract all these and drop them into there, just very quickly. The 4750G has been installed, so what we're going to be using is the stock cooler until I can get something better. May have to get a Noctua low profile, but we'll see. So I'll quickly install this onto here and let's get moving. Everything assembled, including the cheap RAM. Also the new M2 .SSD has gone in there. It's just another one of these, but it's the OS for that machine, and it's replacing this because I want it to be as fast as possible since it's my work machine, and that drive, while great, it's a bit tight fit in here, so it seemed like a good time to upgrade. So anyway, I haven't actually used the IO shield for this machine yet. It's pretty much just lived on my test bench the entire time. It's one of those padded ones, which I'm not massively keen on, but they work. Which way do we go? That way. Okay. Let's get the actual machine in, shall we? Now, for those of you who are wondering, Yes, it does come with the riser. It's a 2-part contraption. Just slots into the X16 slot down here, like so. There's a screw that goes into the back here and here, and then this part just goes the right way around into there like that, and the graphics card goes into there. As mentioned before, what's going in here is the, if it wants to focus, is the GTX 750 Ti, 2GB. Reason for this card is it's silent, and I have many 750 Ti's lying around. I have now got a 1050 Ti, but it does actually have terrible core one. So it's going to be this card in this machine, which is a shame because the 1050 would have been more suitable. But for what I use this machine for, that card is more than enough. The biggest workload this machine gets is rendering a video, and this graphics card is more than capable of doing that, at least at 1080p. And one thing I always forget about this case is the way this is set up. It's much easier to add this here first and get the card in, because there's not a lot of give. There we go. Perfect. And there's a fair bit of space under there for a fan if you require cooling. This being fully passive, it's absolutely fine. There are vents on the top, on the side, and all around this case to allow for that to work just fine. If those are wondering, there's quite a bit of space there. I will measure it at the end and give you exactly how much, but yeah, it's quite a bit of spare space. Now, of course, we won't be needing, well, we need that as CPU, but we won't be needing the GPU power. So this is just going to be flopping around. But right now, we do need to get the hard drive in, well, SSD in. This case can only accommodate two 2.5-inch drives. They can be full thickness, so that's nice, but that's where they live. And what I'm going to be putting in here is a 1TB SanDisk SSD Plus. Not very exciting, I give you that, but it is just for overflow storage at the end of the day. At this point, it's just pretty straightforward. Shift all the cables out of the way. Drop it down here, and it has some little clips to slot into, and that is it. Granted, not great, but it works. There we go, one tightly squeezed in PC. Cable management is not brilliant. It's all kind of like jammed into this space here. It's not ideal. If you had a shroud or something here, then obviously you wouldn't see it and you wouldn't care. Unfortunately, no space behind to deal with it, but it functions and it's okay. The worst part was the USB 3 cable. It's really thick and it's stupidly long, so that's not great. And due to the space down here, I wasn't able to run this through that little gap, so it's having to sit there. But for what I need it for, that's perfectly fine. And once the case is on, who's going to know? It's not obstructing airflow, so there's no issue with how it's been cable managed. So let's pop the top on then, shall we? Yes. There we go. As you can see, the ventilation on the back is pretty basic. This is for the graphics card. I believe you can just about see the card in there. You can see I'm missing a foot, but don't worry about that. Front, ventilation across the top. Ventilation for the CPU fan on the front, on the top even. On the back, it is a very basic affair. But for what I need it for, That is perfect. So you can of course install it the other way around, but there is no vent on the bottom. So if you install it the other way around, you're going to be removing ventilation from the top, which you don't really want to be doing, especially since the PSU is here. But yeah, Fractal node 202, currently a very cheap price if you can get it, while stocks last, because I'm pretty certain this has now been discontinued. I'll be getting another one. It's a great case. Not as small as I would like, as I said before, but its profile is perfect for a business machine, which is what this is going to be going forward. Its job is now to compile code and edit videos. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Pretty terrible case review, I give you that. I don't really have the space for it, but this is more the transplant of the Zenta machine to this machine, and I thought I'd record it while I was doing it. So the workhorse will live on as an AMD machine. I will look into possibly changing the cooler to a Noctua Slimline or an AR6 if there's a newer version. I'll need to have a look at that. But for now, that's all this video is. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. So till then, goodbye.